crap, Asha. I got to fix something as we go live. Here we go.
Welcome to Conversations with Asha and Steve, where communication matters. Join us as we discuss effective ways to communicate, bridge the gaps, and build long-lasting relationships within your business and life. Here are your hosts, Asha Prasad and Steve Harper.
Hey, Dr. Asha, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good, Steve. How are you?
I am doing good. I actually just realized I had a small challenge on the overlay I was going to do for us. So bear with me. Welcome to Conversations with Asha and Steve. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, are both our YouTube channels actually, and on Twitter. So today we are celebrating the launch, the exciting launch of your new book. I'm super excited.
I'm excited.
The Chrysalis Awakening. So I love this. I love this title. Let's dive right in because this is an exciting, exciting opportunity for us to talk about the book and and what a perfect time for it to come out. I mean, I think a lot of people can benefit from this, right?
Well, it's interesting, Steve, because you know what? That's exactly why this book was written in this time. I don't think that there would have been any other time that this book would have been written. It was, really, it's really funny because Mark and I was working on a different book, and then the pandemic hit, and then it was like I had such a difficult time focusing on that other book that somewhere along the way we were just like, wait a minute, we need to write what exactly like our conversations were happening, and notes that I was sending him and everything were revolving around something totally different because I couldn't ignore that the pandemic was going on, and it got me thinking about uncertain times. Yep. What do we do in uncertain times? How do we navigate? How do we find our way when we're so used to, some degree of certainty in our lives, business and professional? So yeah, it's that's how this came out during this time, and I think it's something that a lot of people may still be going through right now because of the pandemic. But I think that we all go through these kinds of uncertainty where we just don't know what direction we want to take our life in.
So you started off on this other book, kind of that journey.
Yeah.
And was it the heaviness of the pandemic that sort of forced this directional change and then sort of, inspired this new work and this motivation to get it out? I mean, having read the book, I can tell you that I'm going back through it a second time. It's phenomenal. Everybody needs to go get it.
Thank you.
You can find it. We've got the graphic up now with the website, which has some great content and great information on the book, as well as some, videos that you've done to explain sort of, the behind the scenes motivation behind this. But, going through the pandemic and that process, it seems like this thing really sort of evolved because of some of the challenges we were all facing, right? And still to a degree facing even in a larger degree, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, Steve, what happened was the reason why I couldn't focus on the other book was because I was going through my own kind of like uncertainty and anxiety actually from everything that was going on. So it was kind of like, it felt disingenuous to write a different book and kind of ignore what was really happening. And so that was one of the things. I mean, Mark, at some point it was painful at times, but Mark and I had this very open and honest conversation. All right, we need to hit the pause button because something else is going on. Like we cannot ignore what's going on. And I think that's why, we tabled that other book for now and created this one.
So this is, a brand new month, September, 1st is when the book launched. And, I know you've been doing all sorts of interviews, all sorts of press. I'm even glad you made time for Conversations with Asha and Steve today. Cause I mean, you're in high demand, right? But I'm curious, what is, this process going through the writing process of this book in comparison to your other, plus launching it in the time of a pandemic, how has that been different for you? And how are people learning about the book? I know you've had to do some things a little bit differently because of the pandemic. So how's this whole launch experience been for you?
It's been completely different, Steve. I think that that's a great question because I was trying to remember, because we're in such a new time right now. Just everything, unprecedented times. And especially where I am in Europe, I mean, we're not having like actual book readings and book launches, not so often anyway. You know, where traditionally you would go into the bookstores and you would have a presentation or have a big, book launch. We just don't have that kind of possibility right now.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, this is going to be different. So I've been really utilizing social media a lot. That's why I have the website with the Chrysalis Awakening book.com, because I wanted to be able to give information, to people that I couldn't interact with in that way.
Yeah.
So we've been doing a lot of different things in that way. I've been doing a lot of interviews, of course, because of the fact that we have capability now for podcasts and radio and all that kind of stuff. So I've been doing a whole lot of that. So it's so different. It's so different than the last one. And the writing process, I think, was even harder than the first time.
Really?
Yes. The writing part, and what I mean by that is because of all the other anxiety and uncertainty that I had going on. For those of you that don't know, I mean, I still have 2 practices, physical brick and mortar practices where I seen patients, and those had to be shut down for several months. So it was just managing all of those things. And I realized the conversations that I was having, because I do coach and mentor people one-on-one, and I work with groups online and from distance and in businesses and, professional one-on-one as well. And the conversations that I was having with literally each and every person is what I included in this book as well, because it was something that I realized we all go through this from time to time. It just so happens that we are collectively going through this at the same time.
Well, so was that from that experience perspective, the fact that we're all kind of going through this is new territory for us. I mean, it kind of feels like old hat right now because we've been doing it for so long. But you and I are having conversations throughout that process, whether it be in preparation for our shows that we were doing for Conversations with Asha and Steve, and or just kind of the conversations offline about what we were personally experiencing. And one of the things that I think that really kind of rings true that you said back then and rings true when you read this book is this was a gift in some ways, right? Can you clarify what that, this momentary pause in our lives has, what do you mean by that as a gift?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think that in our busy, hectic lives, unless we are making time for self-reflection and introspection, it's not going to happen.
Yep.
I mean, we have to be conscious, and we have to be deliberate about it. We have to be disciplined about it. And I think one of the biggest gifts that this has given us is that, pause, like necessary. This is it. We're coming to a halt, because I think a lot of people, and that's something that a lot of my clients go through, even my patients in the practices, they realize that they weren't really happy with what was going on before COVID even hit. Now that they've gone through this kind of pause. And so we don't really get that opportunity unless we consciously take it. And I think from that perspective, it is a gift, because we get to go and dig deep and face some things. It's not always easy. It's not always easy to do it. It's not always fun, but in fact, it's more than likely not fun. Right, Steve?
Yeah. Why are you looking at me?
Well, I can speak for myself. It wasn't always fun.
I actually feel like you wrote this book for me, like the 5 things that Steve really needs to be paying attention to in his life right now. Which is probably why you are looking at me. It's like, oh, okay, well, I wrote this for everybody, but really you, Steve, because you are a train wreck.
No.
What?
But Steve, it's interesting, though. Yeah. I just want to say something about that, because even for people that had it all together or that have it all together, even for them, okay, something like this or some sort of uncertain time can really shake you to your core.
Absolutely.
You may be on a certain track, and then something can happen, and then you're like, wait a second. Actually, I kind of want to be going down this way, so yeah.
This is, so Julie Truesdale is a teacher in California that follows our podcast and has been a great supporter of us for a long time on Facebook. Just said, yay, this is awesome news. Good morning, guys. So, Julie,
thank you. Good morning.
Thanks for tuning in today. We appreciate it. I know it's super early for you over there, and excited for you to join us this morning. If there's any specific questions that you might have for Dr. Asha, Julie, or anyone that's tuning in across our various platforms. We're celebrating the launch of Dr. Asha Prasad's book this morning, The Chrysalis Awakening. You can learn more at the chrysalisawakeningbook.com. This is a really phenomenal website that she's put up to give some insights and perspective on the amazing, perspective and strategy she's put into this book. And so I was super excited. When you were going through this process, you didn't even really tell me you were writing, right? So, I mean, this is legit. I mean, she's coming out of her cocoon to launch this sucker. It was
exactly.
I talked to you once a week, and you just kind of kept that on the down low for a while. For those of you that were tuned in last week, we actually had our joint editor, Mark Schwartz, on with us, and he didn't even say anything to me. You guys were just working on this in secret. Was that by design or,
No. Not at all. You know what, Steve? It was kind of the nature of the beast, actually. It really was. We literally were in a cocoon. I know it sounds, and that's why, the name of the book, The Chrysalis Awakening, it is really about emerging from that cocoon and emerging out of this kind of introspection. And I think that's probably why, and a lot of people actually did not know that I was writing a book this whole time. It's just been something, I don't know. It was a very personal, intimate kind of thing, because a lot of what I have poured into this book is really stuff that I myself have gone through or have evaluated or reflected upon. The tools that I introduce in this book are also things that I myself personally have used. So I think that that's probably why that wasn't intentional, Steve. I wasn't trying to keep you in the dark.
I thought it was maybe you just didn't want me letting the news out too early. I know that, hey, you'll come to me and say, Steve, now don't say anything. I've got this coming out or this happening. And then I'll be like, we'll be going live and I'll be like, hey, Asha, tell me about that thing that I wasn't supposed to talk about. I don't take offense to it at all. And I appreciated the personal acknowledgement in the book. I'm just so amazed that you, found the time to even, put that in there for little old me. I'm so grateful.
Oh, Steve, come on.
Well, so, kind of changing gears a little bit, compare this book to your past book. So maybe for those of, the listeners that aren't familiar with your first book, tell us just a little snippet about it, and then, compare and contrast that a little bit from, that book to this book.
Yeah. So my first book, Authentic Alignment, is really about, that is a book that I wrote, 5 years ago. Can you believe it's been 5 years ago, Steve? I cannot believe that. That's 5 years ago. I swear, it's really flying by.
I thought we were in the pandemic for 5 years. So
I know. I'm like, wait a minute. Oh, it wasn't there. Okay. Yeah. That was way back when. But that was my first book. And that book was really something that it's about health. It's about well-being. It's about this concept of how we view our wellness, our well-being, and not just looking at it as physical, but looking at it as mental, emotional, and spiritual, and how all of those 4 areas are integrated with one another. And I shared in that book a lot of experiences, being a practitioner for many, many years now. I have seen some amazing transformations in my patients over the years and clients. And, since then, that really, whenever you get into changing, so say, for example, you have back pain, for example, but whenever you look beyond the back pain to see kind of what's underlying that on a mental, emotional, or spiritual level, you really get to the root of the problem. And I wanted to share that with people because I was having those conversations over and over and over again. And I had seen some miraculous things happen in the years of being a practitioner. And I wanted to share that. So that book was really about that, changing kind of a paradigm, kind of having a paradigm shift of how you view health and what it can look like and how you can get there, on the different areas. So that's what that book was about. And this book, I feel, is more about that mental, emotional piece of what do I do with my life? I'm at a crossroads. I'm at a transition. What now? I want something different. I'm not necessarily unhappy, but I'm not necessarily content either. Like, am I going to be okay if I live the next 40 years of my life in this way? Yeah. And if the answer is no, or if you hesitate, it could be time to take a different path.
Yeah. The thing I kind of looked, when I looked at the 2 books, one was kind of more of a kind of a global approach to your overall life, right? And This really
Right.
gets into the very specifics and, helps
Yeah.
you evaluate where you are right now and, really kind of diving deeper into the world of possibilities. And I
Right.
think, like you mentioned, the pandemic with that pause, there were a lot of people that, there was a lot of fear and a lot of,
Yeah.
concern about what was going to happen, right? Financially to
Yeah.
us, to, to the impacts to our, a lot of things, personal, liberties, the,
Right.
where we could travel, what we could do, whether we're
Yeah.
masking, whether we're not. And then, of course, you had, very big concerns about what it was going to do to impact our businesses. Especially we have
Yeah.
a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners that tune into this show for ideas and tips that that we've shared in the past
Hmm.
about what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. There was a lot of anxiety, right? And I
Yeah.
think at that point, you need something really positive to, start putting your time,
Yeah.
energy, and attentions towards. And now, as we kind of come into this, what, is probably like the second wave of the pandemic, the book coming out at this time couldn't be more perfect for people to say, look,
Right.
if we do end up having to go back and work from home, or we have to, maybe socially distance a little more than we have been up to this point. We kind of went buck wild
Yeah.
when things kind of opened up, and now we're kind of back going, well, we maybe, are
Yeah.
paying a little bit of those consequences now. Utilizing this time the second go around is,
Yeah.
an important aspect. So what would you say to somebody who is like, how can I temper some of that anxiety and some of that frustration with some of the positive goodness that the book offers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about really taking, we're assessing where you are and then taking little steps. You don't have to take it's not like you have to like completely say, okay, I'm just going to change my entire life. I'm not happy with any of it and everything has to change because of the
Yeah.
uncertainty in the pandemic right now. It's about taking the little steps. And there are definitely some exercises that I share in this book that help you get there, no matter whatever, whatever level you're at, whatever situation you're at, whatever point that you are in evaluating what's going on. Because I think one of the biggest things that causes the anxiety of the uncertainty and the unknown is that all of a sudden we get into this panic mode and we go like crazy with our
Yeah.
thinking and we go from one negative thought to the next and then we talk to everybody about it and then it grows and grows and grows. So we've got to learn to shift our focus
Yeah.
to look at the positives. And I think that that's a very important place to start, because then you'll start to see that your anxiety will start to reduce and lessen quite a bit.
So this actually ties in perfectly because we just got a question from Diane. Can you give us an example of a strategy to temper the stress we're all facing?
Yeah. So one of the things that is really important that I always advise people to do is that when you start feeling, because we normally will start to feel the anxiety come up, we'll start to feel it, and then we'll start to think about, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? I don't know what to do, and we start getting into our minds and we start writing a story, is what I call it, basically creating this monster that's not even approached us yet, because
Yeah.
it's that road of uncertainty. What I always advise people to do is bring your attention immediately to your breath, meaning breathing, deep breathing through the belly, in through the nose, out through the nose, deep. And I know it may sound like a very simple exercise to do, but it's one of the best ways to do, is because what it does is, on a physiological level, is it stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is all about bringing the calmness into our systems.
Yeah.
So instead of going off in your mind, focus on your breathing. That's just one way that you can start, at least, to kind of temper that anxiety, the anxious
So,
feelings.
tying that back to the breathing,
Yeah.
would you recommend, is that something where you're just taking momentary pauses? Is that something that you suggest? I know we've talked about this on the show for
Yeah.
a lot of time about meditation and
Hmm.
sort of incorporating that into the practice,
Yeah.
but being mindful about that breathing and that, and utilizing
Yeah.
that time, whether it be in short spurts, or does somebody have to go sit under a tree and actually meditate to?
You know what? That's a good question, Steve, because honestly, you can do it throughout the day. I mean, there are many, and this is something that I do cover a lot with when I'm working with clients and working with groups, is I am really big about breathing techniques, because there are so many a variety of different techniques that you can do. So if anybody wants any information about that, please do head to our site, contact us. Definitely would be happy to get you that information, because it's something that you can do throughout the day. If you want to make a practice of it where you're literally, taking the 10 minutes and go sitting down quietly, that's perfect. But whatever it is, start wherever you are, whatever you feel comfortable with. I mean, those breathing exercises I myself personally do throughout the day just to remain calm, just because I'm dealing with a lot of things, a lot of people, lots of different things throughout the day. And sometimes, you can feel yourself kind of getting caught up with the anxiety or the busyness. And to get yourself really calm, it's one of those things. So you can make it a practice throughout the day.
Yeah. Well, so
Yeah.
this book, so that everybody knows, the book is available today at Amazon.com, or they can order
Mhm.
from the Chrysalis
Yes.
Awakening book.com website.
Yeah, so they can order there, and on the site right now we've got the ebook version ready, and we're doing pre-orders for the print. And
Awesome.
Audible should be out sometime soon.
Let's talk about Audible. Is that, I know you've
Oh
been
God.
going through this process. I
Yeah,
think that there's a lot of advantage to picking up a hard copy of the book and getting your, or an
I do
ebook
too.
version that you can incorporate into your reader, however you read your ebooks.
Yeah,
But I do think that, I encourage our listeners and our audience to buy the book so that you have it.
yeah,
Number one, because when Audible does release this, it's going to be real helpful for them to go along with you as you take them on that journey.
exactly.
And with
Yeah,
Audible, you can probably incorporate a few things that maybe didn't make it into the written book,
yes,
which I think
yes,
is always kind of fun and a unique experience. I also know from personal experience, it's a challenge. I know you're
yeah,
at the end of that journey, and I'm sure you're
exactly.
grateful for that. But
Yes, I
I,
am.
I the thing I would tell you about Asha, knowing her as long as I have, is you should definitely check out her work and see what she does, because she does a lot of other. She has her own podcast that she does, that she puts out with episodes that are really really important and timely, but just the videos that you do and the mindfulness moments that you put out each week really really take you inside of your head and help you really kind of focus on something positive and something good for you, both mentally and physically. But I can't wait for the Audible version, because you're so enjoyable to listen to and to talk to anyway. I think the Audible book is going to just
Oh,
be a
thank you,
smashing
Steve.
hit. So we have it looks like another question.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not so much a question, but a statement. Most people
Mhm.
don't understand the concept of turning into a butterfly. I can't wait to read this, Maya. So, talk
Oh, thank
talk a
you.
little bit about that transformation. I think that process of
Hmm.
what it takes to go through the hard work and sort of
Yeah,
be able to shift and sort of transform in a beautiful way to
yeah,
come out on the other end as something else. I think that's kind of the intent behind the whole title and the approach that you're taking here. But talk about that
yes.
process. What inspired it? Why did you do it? In kind of this capacity.
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of interesting because I've always, I mean, even as a little child, I've been fascinated with butterflies. I mean, that is one thing. Like any place I can go to go visit a butterfly farm or anything like
Yeah,
that, I am there. It's just I'm just fascinated because of that whole transformation that a butterfly takes. It's. I mean, think about a caterpillar and then think about the end product of a butterfly. I
yeah,
mean, there's this whole, and I don't know if anybody out there has ever watched it. If you haven't, get on YouTube, Google it, whatever it is. If you see the process of what a butterfly has to go through in the darkness of the cocoon and to emerge out, it really does look like a painful process.
yeah,
But the end result of that beautiful, I mean, the first moment that butterfly comes out and spreads its wings, it's magical.
yeah,
It's a really magical thing. And that's for me, the Chrysalis Awakening for us, if you can relate that to the process that we go through, is that we go through that as well. I mean, think about uncertain times or something that you've gone through, a loss of a job, or,
yeah,
even what we're all going through right now with the pandemic, whatever it is, loss of a loved one or illness or whatever it is, that darkness that you feel, you kind of feel like you're kind of forced inward, and it's in that process that so many beautiful things are forming and changing and happening. And then, a couple of weeks later, a couple of months later, we emerge into that beautiful butterfly.
yeah, yeah,
We have the opportunity to do it. And that's exactly why I wanted that imagery to be used in the title of this book. I remember when Mark and I had talked about it, to going on about it. It was really interesting because it just made sense. It was
Yep.
like, yes, that's exactly what it is. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, to hear you talk about it, I mean, it really is inspiring. And we actually just had someone that used those exact words. Tim Lewis from Portland just said you're inspiring,
Mhm.
Asha. So thank you for
Oh,
tuning
thank
in,
you, Tim.
Tim. And I know
Thank
Asha
you.
appreciates that comment. She is inspiring. She inspires me every week, every time we have a conversation. So, you talk about that metamorphosis, right? That transformation that goes
Right.
through and that process. I think people have a tendency to look towards these books sometimes when they are in those, situations
Yeah.
of crisis. And of course, those are things that you want to hang on to because you need some positivity, you need some different
Yeah.
perspective. But, one of the things that I also find for those of you that are like, I don't really have any of that right now. I'm not stressed over the pandemic. Things
Yeah.
are back to kind of normal, etc. I actually would suggest that this is now perfect time for you to go through this
Yeah.
book because even if everything seems like it's a-okay and the life is quite dandy at present,
Yeah.
there does tend to be a tendency when things are going well for us to not put that time, energy, and focus on ourselves and put in the work. And even when things are
Yeah.
going good, I think that's even more important for you to put double down and put your work in to see just how much more
Yeah.
you can get out of your life or whatever area of
Exactly.
focus that you might have. So speak to that for a second if you
Absolutely.
could.
Yeah, you know what, Steve? That's a really good point because I will tell you something, just in bad times or what we consider bad times or low times, it's not the only time to be doing our personal work. Our personal growth and development is an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, for example, why do we get up and go to the gym or work out, for example? Why do we, those kinds of things? It's the same way. And doing that kind of internal work, even when things are going great, it's a different experience than somebody that may be having a low period of their life at this time. But I will tell you, you will discover things about yourself that you did not know, potential, maybe like I was saying earlier, a different path may be emerging that you didn't even know was there, that could be much more fulfilling for you and much more suited for where you are right now, because we, as human beings, we get used to like the status quo. We
Yeah.
get used to, and especially when things are going good, we're like, you know what? Things are good.
Yeah.
I don't need to change, because we don't want to change,
Sure.
actually. It's not that we have to, but wouldn't it be something if you could really, live up to your full potential? I mean,
Yep.
wouldn't that be awesome? When you're 90 years old to look back and go, yeah, I did it all. I
Yeah.
tried it at least,
Yeah.
I went for it. Like, wouldn't that be a great feeling for everybody?
Absolutely. And,
Yeah,
and enjoying the fruits of those efforts at that point, right?
exactly.
I think, to that point, I think, this is something that you could do at any stage of your life. And what I found going
Yeah.
through that book, like I'm rereading it for the
Mhm.
second time, is this is not
Right,
something that is actually read it one time and put it away. This is actually,
right.
you go through it, you kind of experience it, and then you want to kind of go back through it. You want to kind of look at what did I
Yeah,
learn? What did I reveal? What did I experience that first go around, and how different, or where, what additional effort can I put towards this
right.
transformation that I'm looking for? And what I find is that, 5 questions, seem, like that, just kind of initially it's like, well, these are good, inviting questions, but they're not really kind of set it and forget it kind of questions. They really are
Right.
designed to give you some heavy lifting, heavy thought process going through this. And
Yeah.
if you're honest with yourself about evaluating where you are and ultimately where you could be or where you should be,
Hmm.
I think that no matter where you are in life, whether times are good or times are, not so good, this is a perfect guide and sort of the Bible in terms of helping you figure out, okay, well, how am I
Right.
going to get to where I could be?
Yeah, and you know what, Steve, about those questions too. I mean, there's many questions that we can ask ourselves, but I find that these questions are the answers change no matter like in different phases of our life
Yeah.
too. If I had asked myself that question 20 years ago, I guarantee there would be different answers than now. So it is something, and
Yeah.
and that was one of the things that was really important for me is I wanted a book to be something that people could reference to,
Yeah.
many times, multiple times, that and they could get something out of it differently, the second or third time going through it. I thought that that was really wanted that to really be important because I think it can apply, in different situations, different phases of our life.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
for our audience, this isn't just a self-help book. This is a companion guide
Yeah.
to helping you, figure out the landscape where you are today, where you might be tomorrow. Those things
Right.
that tend to bubble up and change our perspective. You and I have talked about it on past episodes. I
Right.
mean, it is amazing. Things can be going so great. Then all of a sudden you hit that day, you have
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
wall, either something that's brought on by stress, maybe a bad interaction with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
an ugly situation with an employee or customer or whatever, and you're off kilter. This becomes an opportunity for you to kind of come back, return to those pages, look at the answers and
Right.
that you've given to some of these questions before, and kind of do a good mental reset. The whole time I kept thinking, like,
Yeah.
I can hear your voice in my head talking through these things, and they were so
Yeah.
powerful because as I went through it personally, each of these questions, I was pretty shocked and surprised about
Mm-hmm.
how I was responding to some of those activities that you had in the book. So maybe
Right.
without giving too much about the book away, but maybe
Mm-hmm.
give a frame of reference for some of the things that you asked the reader to participate in, because this isn't just,
Mm-hmm.
hey, read it, set it aside, and maybe it'll
Exactly.
work. This, you got to put in some time, energy,
Yeah.
and effort if you truly want to transform into what you could potentially be.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. It is something that, of course, you take in the information, and not everything, not all the exercises that I've laid out in there are going to pertain to everybody. You may have to handpick which ones really resonate with you. But I mean, something like evaluating what your values are, what you really stand for. And I think that this is really important for entrepreneurs, for everybody, but also I want to say for entrepreneurs, especially because, especially if you're on the brink of starting your own business, or maybe you've been in business for a while,
Yeah.
have you defined what your values are? What do you stand for? And the reason why that's so important to know and to go through these exercises is that that is something that you're communicating all the time with your customers, with your
Yeah.
employees, with everybody that you interact. If you are very strong in that and you know what you stand for, it's going to help you so much more in your business, in all kinds of communication and all kinds of transactions that are going to happen. So but that's one of them that I thought was with the exercises, Steve. I think that one is probably one of the toughest for people, even
Hmm.
working with clients, about really defining what their values are. I don't think that we think about what we stand for in that way as much as we could be or we should be doing.
Well, yeah, you learn about these
Yeah.
things in school.
Right.
You read about these things in psychology class, but nobody ever goes
Right.
back to legitimately start to define that. And like every aspect of your
Right.
life, you have to get really clear about what
Yeah.
what your values are, because that sort of dictates how you treat yourself, which is a huge
Yes.
factor, as well as how
Yeah.
you will accept treatment from other people, how you define
Exactly.
the rules of the game by which other people will play with you. And if you're not clear, then you tend to be like the kind of the pinball ball, just
Yeah.
bouncing from point to point, which becomes a challenge for a lot of people, and so you feel very untethered. And so I find
Yes.
that this activity becomes a very important aspect. And like you mentioned, Asha, your values and some of the answers to these questions, they're going to shift and
Hmm.
change based on
Yes.
environments. I mean, just since I last saw you, how much stuff have we gone through, and
Yeah.
good and bad, right? Since the last episode that we had last Friday. So I think
Exactly.
these things become very important, but the value piece, what is in your heart and what is firmly affixed in your mind,
Hmm.
you get what you focus on. And if you spend the
Yeah.
time to look at where you're aligned with your current values, I think that activity becomes very valuable for you. Not only now reading the book, but I think as you go
Right.
through, the beginning of a new quarter, we're coming up on a new
Yeah.
year, shortly. These times are opportunities for us to look inward and kind of say, hey, am I still in alignment with what I determined 3 months ago
Exactly.
my values were? Have there been changes to my environment that might require a revision or an adjustment?
Right.
So I think that that alone, I think, is a really positive experience. So our buddy Mark Schwartz, your editor, my editor, the
Hey,
rock
Mark.
star of last week's episode,
Yes.
is tuning in. He said, Asha, which of those 5 questions was most challenging for you personally to answer? I mean, he just went right for it, right there.
He
Boom,
just went
put you on
right
notice.
for it.
Yeah, yeah, man.
You know what? And this is interesting. Thank you, Mark, for the question. You know what? I think the question that was most difficult for me to answer was, what have I learned? And I know that that may sound really like, really? That was a question? Yes, it was the question, because I think for me personally, I've been through a tremendous amount of uncertainty my entire life. It's just been one uncertainty after another. And some of them have just happened and some of them I have chosen. So, but what I realized in answering that particular question was, what have I really learned? What exactly, did this really give me? What tools? Because sometimes whenever you're going through this process of, developing new skills or developing new coping mechanisms or whatever it is, sometimes we take it for granted that, oh, you know what, everybody knows that, everybody knows how to do it. So it was very difficult for me to answer that particular question, because I think that there were some things that I just did not realize I had learned, that other people were maybe not doing or not focusing on. So good question, Mark.
That is a good question. And I would do a follow up. I mean,
Yeah.
you not only wrote this, but you actually have this all based in experience, right? So,
Yes.
it is something that you've used in your own personal life. It's something you've used with
Yeah.
your clients. So as you were going through that process, and I would imagine probably through that final edit phase where you had to read the book all over again and you kind of went
Yeah.
through it, what stuck out for you in terms of, sort of your hope and aspiration, for what the reader would get? And I asked that
Yeah.
question, and actually literally just got another question in from Julie that said, what do you hope people take away from this book? So great minds must think alike. But I think that it's timely, because I think at the end of the day,
Yeah.
you start off with a mission, kind of a goal for when you're
Hmm.
writing, and, you have this idea, but that too, that idea and that concept, transforms throughout that writing process. So once that
Right.
happened and once you got through it and sort of you're ready to launch this thing and send it
Hmm.
off into the air for everybody to, to appreciate and to consume, how did that maybe change your perspective, or did it change your perspective in any way? What you hope people would walk away with?
It did. You know what, Steve? That's a really good question, because I feel like one of the biggest things that I would love for people to take away from this book is that, to have some inspiration and some motivation, that if you are not where you want to be in your life, and no matter what it is, personal, professional, even health wise, whatever that may be, I just hope that you get the inspiration and motivation to take your first step towards what it is that you really want, and that it's never too late.
Yep.
It's just never too late to start over. You can start over and over and over again. It does not matter what phase you're in, but I really hope that people realize that they deserve better than maybe what they are in right now. Or different, I should say. It's not necessarily better, but different, if that's what they're really wanting to step into. And I hope that they really get that inspiration and motivation and get some tools to start that journey for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're just joining us, we appreciate you tuning into Conversations with Asha and Steve. We do this live stream as an opportunity for Asha and I to have a conversation about something, the topic of the week, as we like to call it. But today we're focused on the Chrysalis Awakening, the book that Dr. Asha has just released on September 1st. It's available at Amazon.com, as well as the ChrysalisAwakeningBook.com. That's her website. That website, by the way, Asha, the
Yeah.
beautifully done, unbelievable approach to how you kind of took the direction. But, the thing that I kind of like, this
Yeah.
visualize your future, transform your life, awaken to the possibilities. This is really an invitation to the party, right? For a lot of those folks
Yeah.
that are trying to figure out, hey, do I buy this book? What am I going to get out of it? And the thing that I really enjoyed and appreciated the most is Asha's put together some really good snippets of videos that allow you the opportunity to kind of, hear from her what she hopes you get out of this book, aside from just what we're talking about today. But, some of these specific questions, what your intentions are behind some of the questions that are asked, some of the activities that you put in there. So I highly, highly recommend that you check out the the ChrysalisAwakeningBook.com. And then at the very
Mhm.
bottom of the page, you can sign up for and to be notified of some of the great live events that you're doing, some of the
Yeah.
virtual group coaching programs that you're offering. I've been a participant in the work that you've done in the past. It's amazing, and I know that people will benefit greatly from it. So we appreciate you guys. Definitely. That is the book right there. I mean, I'm doing my best to make sure that I send people that direction, because there's such great content on that website for sure.
I have to say thank you for that, Steve. I appreciate that. And this has been a very, now that we're at the end of it, and Mark can probably agree with this as well, is that because it was quite a painful process, just like what we were talking about before with the butterfly, because of the circumstances, all the external circumstances that were going on in our world. But I will say, now that the book is out, I'm very excited and happy to share it with people and get it out there to people to help them. And that's why, I was getting a lot of questions from people about, are you going to be doing any groups, or are you going to be doing, and definitely going to be doing that. So definitely be sure to check it out on that site. So
when you do those group sessions, are you guys, in those sessions diving into the questions in real time? Are you,
yes, it's going to be in real time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be in real time. Part of that program is going to be where people can access it, at their own leisure. But I'm definitely going to have an aspect of that's going to be in real time as well. And so I'm really looking forward to that. Really looking forward to that.
So I had a question. For some reason, it's not showing back up on our question list, but somebody asked about the book that you had started, and when this took precedent, when will that book be out? So, I mean, the clock is now ticking, obviously, for book number 3.
The book is going to be out next year.
Actually,
because here's the interesting thing about that book is that we have a lot of content already done for that book.
Yeah.
Interesting in the book. So, you know what? Mark and I decided, let's take a little bit of a break and then let's go back and finish that book. Yeah. So that'll be next year. I don't know exactly when. I would say next summer-ish, maybe. I don't know. Summer, fallish. I don't know.
Like, hey, just let me get this one out the door. I mean, come on. No pressure, right? Well, so what's the question that I haven't asked you that you most you want to answer about this book? What should people, what should they learn about, what else can they learn about this book? What question should I have asked that I didn't ask yet?
I think you've covered just basically about everything, Steve. One of the things, though, I will say this, because it was interesting, because I had a really good friend of mine that read the book. She got the book, in the mail, and she read the book, and she was just like, I don't really know. She didn't realize that she was actually having an issue with things that were changing in her life. Okay. She just did not know. I mean, she was stressed out, but she really just did not know. And she said, Asha, I picked up your book, and I was just like, oh my God, wait a second. She's talking to me. She's like, I didn't realize. And so, it's interesting, because one of the things that I would like for people to realize is that a lot of times in our day-to-day life, in our society, we don't put enough emphasis on this aspect of ourselves, our mental and emotional well-being. And I want to say, I think it's about time that we start doing that, because it's a matter of that affects everything else in our life. Yeah. I mean, I think that we've seen some of that, Steve, in the world recently, where people have just been like, athletes, for example, we've talked about that on previous episodes, where people have just been like, I need a break. I need to take a time out. And this is something that this pandemic has given us, but also any kind of uncertainty that you're going through. It's okay to take some time for yourself to figure out mentally and emotionally how to get yourself strong and how to get yourself healthy.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I would say it's not just okay, it's essential for you to be
It's essential. Exactly.
To make sure that you have, you're allowing yourself the time and space to do these things. And we have talked about this on prior episodes, but this becomes a really good way to do that, right? This book, it's exceptionally written. You're an amazing writer. Mark and you did a phenomenal job on the final product. I'm super, super proud of you for that. But the thing that I think that I want our listeners to understand is this book will inevitably change you. If you'll take the time to go through it, even like you said, with that, that client that you, talked to, or that friend that had gotten the
Mm-hmm.
book, said, I kind of just did it, but, I didn't realize I had something I needed to be
Right.
focused on. And,
Yeah.
there were a couple of key things that, I had that very same experience. So as you were telling that story,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yep, I totally get that, because I was kind of in the
Yeah.
same way. There are things that I wasn't looking at as closely as I could have or should
Mm-hmm.
have. And there were things that I kind of maybe were probably fearful to actually, really
Yeah.
engage with, because, I don't want to rock the boat. I feel like my luck is,
Yeah.
turning. I've got, good things happening. But at the same time, good isn't great and great isn't awesome,
Right.
right? So there's always room and
Exactly.
opportunity for improvement in
Yeah.
every aspect. And so for me personally, I kind of went through that same experience that your friend did. So it's
Yeah.
I think you will definitely benefit from, taking the time to go through the book and go through it once, go through the activities, ask yourself those deeper questions, be honest with yourself, and, make that a good firm assessment of where you are right now in your life, and then
Yeah.
recognize that the opportunity for you to continue to transform and remake and you know re-engineer your your approach to
Exactly.
everything is very much possible.
It is, Steve. That's well said. I mean, it really is. I mean, you're living proof of it. I'm living proof of it as well,
Yeah,
that we can always reinvent ourselves.
yeah,
You
and
know, we always can.
yeah, and you said something. I should go back to that point.
Yeah.
Where we talk about our physical health, we talk about trying to align ourselves as best as we can with our work and our
Mm-hmm.
purpose, but not a lot of effort or energy gets put towards all of the things that go into the head, right? The mental game,
Exactly.
and when you don't have a prompt to stop and talk about your values, talk about
Mm-hmm.
where do I really want to be, where do I really want to go, we
Right.
don't. And we
No,
have
we
this
don't.
tendency to just fall into the, kind of, with the rest of the herd and just move, along with everybody else. And that's unfortunate, because that's not where real change occurs. And so I think
Yeah.
your emphasis on making sure that people are doing this on an ongoing, regular basis. That's the thing I think that the book really provides to me, is that no
Yeah.
matter where I am or what I'm going through, I can come back to that, and I can take snippets of what you've shared and really dive back in to address certain things that might be coming up in present day.
Right. No, definitely. I mean, mindset is key. It's very important. The way where our mind is, you know, what you said earlier too, Steve, what you focus on, that's where your attention goes and that's where all your energy goes. So just you want to make sure that you've got your mind, you know, focused in the right places and in the right way, you know, kind of geared towards the right kind of thinking that's going to give you the results that you're wanting in life and get you that sense of fulfillment and purpose that I think everybody wants, you know,
Yes.
everybody wants to feel that in their life.
Well, in questions like you've laid out the five in the book here, and I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
ask you about what the sixth one was that didn't make the book. I'm curious,
Oh gosh.
but questions when you ask them are incredibly helpful, because they
Hmm.
require that you actually, when you're in, if you and I were having that conversation and you were asking
Hmm.
me those questions and we were streaming,
Yeah.
I would clean that up. I would sanitize it for, other people's consumption, because that's what we feel compelled to do. But when we ask these questions of
Right.
ourselves, and we're truly honest with ourselves about what those answers are, and we have that
Hmm.
opportunity to have that open dialogue, that conversation, and really dig in to how and why I responded the way I did, or where I am
Hmm.
at my current situation in life. There's a real there's a refreshing aspect to that, that process. And those
Right.
questions don't don't have to be just a one-time thing. They can become an every time
No.
thing, and when you need them,
Right.
those questions are there. And like you said earlier,
Right.
the changes in your responses and your answers will shift, based on where you
Yeah.
are at that point in your life. But if you're not asking yourself those deeper, more meaningful questions on an ongoing, consistent basis, then
Hmm.
you're probably not fully realizing your potential. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I would agree with that, Steve, and I think that that's one of the reasons why, you know, books like this one, and it kind of provides that. But I also think, like, people that are working with coaches and mentors, this is why people work with coaches and mentors,
Yeah.
because they need that reflection. They need somebody to reflect it back to them and ask them the deeper questions, because those are just not questions that we ask ourselves on a regular basis unless we make it a practice of doing so. But even then, it's one of those things that in order to dig deeper, we've got to just keep on going down that line of inquiry within us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So these are the 5 most powerful questions. What's the 6th craziest question that you would have asked if Mark had let you put it in there?
That's a good question. I don't know, Steve. Maybe there's another follow-up book to that 6th question.
There could be. I would say, why are you not buying this book? That should be the question, right?
Yeah.
Why have you not purchased this book already? Because it is available at the chrysalisawakeningbook.com, that website. I would tell you that it's available now on pre-order for the print. Those will be shipping soon from Amazon.com.
Yes.
You can get the Kindle version currently at Amazon.com, and on Asha's website, you've got the ability to download that into an e-reader as well. I highly, highly recommend you get that book in whatever form, whether it be the ebook form, hard copy, because it's going to be essential, because when you launch the audiobook, it's an opportunity for you to have that follow along and that real ongoing conversation with Asha as the narrator. So I think that's going to be very essential. So I highly recommend you go get the book. It will be money well spent, because you're investing in yourself and in your life. And that's something that we have a tendency not to do enough, right? Wouldn't you say, Dr. Asha?
It's true. That's very true. I think that that's one of the things that we kind of take for granted, and we've got to invest in ourselves. We've got to take the time to take care of ourselves, because that's really the only way that we can really be there for other people, actually.
Absolutely.
Really be there in every aspect in our life. So, yes,
So let me
I
ask you
agree.
a hard-hitting question. What was something when you went through these 5 questions most recently, we
Mhm.
talked about you reading through it again, what was something that was kind of surprising to you as you went back through this process,
Mhm.
because you've gone through the challenges we talked about early on, just for those of you that are joining
Yeah.
late, that Dr. Asha kind of pivoted. She had a book that was in process, but when the pandemic struck, this kind of became an opportunity to put that on the back burner and focus more on this work. So some things changed for you, right, through the writing
Yeah.
process and the approach. But what was something surprising that came out of you going through this work, putting in this time, energy, and effort to go through these 5 questions for yourself?
Well, one thing that was really interesting, Steve, is that I seemingly, despite everything that was going on, I was able to navigate so much better during this uncertain time, even though I still had a lot of things going on, which really surprised me. And
Really?
actually, I didn't realize it until I was talking to a really good friend of mine, a lifelong friend of mine who's known me forever and knows how crazy I used to be able to get when things were not, things weren't certain.
You?
It's just like freaking out. And
Yeah.
so,
I don't believe it.
and and I was really surprised at that, because then what that gave to me, what that made me realize, was that these practices and these tools, these skills really do work. They really do make a difference if you're willing to put in the work with it. And so whenever I was going back through the book, I could see how those things I was able to keep calm in unknown territory, because I think we all dealt with that unknown territory, and it was just like, okay. So I was pretty shocked with that. I was pretty surprised with that, to be honest with you, pleasantly so.
That's good. That's good. And the one thing I found that was pretty incredible, and again,
Mm-hmm.
because Dr. Asha did not share with me that she was writing the book during this time, even though I was talking to her once a week, I think that she was worried about security leaks. I'm not sure what the issue was, but we'll talk about that offline. But at the end of the day, I think that, seeing you go through what you went through during the pandemic, I
Mm-hmm.
was stressed for you, because you had, people on your payroll.
Yeah.
The country there was on even more stricter lockdown for
Yeah.
longer periods of time than we were here in the U.S. You
Yeah.
were having to deal with patients that could go and turn nowhere for their care,
Yeah.
and you were under a tremendous amount of stress to keep it all together. Could we make it out of this? Could you financially survive it? And I think what I found most refreshing, and so when I read the book, that I had to smile and give you a little nod, but one of the things that I think I realized that I saw in you over the course of the past year and a half or so was that you really sort of settled on what is your why and what that motivation is for you going forward. And you said it early on, what do I want the next 40 years to be? What do I want this next, chapter of my life to be? I feel like, having spent the time that I've spent with you, that you really reconstituted your own purpose and commitment to what your contribution is to the world.
Yeah, no, thank you, Steve, for that. It's interesting to hear that reflection, because we spent a lot of time together during this whole last year and a half,
Virtually.
At least once
I don't
a
want
week.
anybody to think we were like, hanging out, because Asha won't even come back to the U.S. to visit me, but that's fine.
They have to let me in first.
That's true.
I have to be able to get back in. No, but it is something that I would say probably crystallized even more for me of what I stand for, what my purpose is, how I want to help people, what I want to do in the world. And that's been a very, very interesting, I would say, process, but that definitely has crystallized much more during this time. So.
Well, I will say, for one, I am super, super proud of you. This has been, I know, a labor of love. I mean, I don't want our listeners to think she didn't tell me. She literally told me 2 weeks before it was coming out. I mean, I'm not offended. No, I'm just kidding. I knew this process was in play for the last couple of months. I knew it's been, a struggle to get it done and get it completed. And when you look back, it's that most painful, last quarter of the mile to get a book out.
Exactly.
I know in the the fog of war, it becomes a challenge, but once it's done, you've got this, you can just exhale and you can enjoy the process. And I think as you've gone through the recording of the Audible, the audio version of the book, I think, you've gotten to appreciate the great work that you've done, because this book is amazing. And so if you're out there listening, you're catching this on the rebroadcast on Facebook, YouTube, on our podcast platforms, definitely go to the ChrysalisAwakeningBook.com. You're going to want to check that out and see all the great work and effort that Asha has put onto the website there, so that you can kind of see what's going on relative to, the offering. She's got some great videos. She's got some good, direction in terms of why this book can make a difference to you now. And I guarantee you it will. She's done a phenomenal job here with this book to really open up anyone's perspective about where they are today, where they could be tomorrow. And that transformation process, you got to put in the work, right? The caterpillar doesn't just show up and instantly become the butterfly. You have to put in the work in order to get there. But you've done an amazing job lining out the process and the approach. And this isn't a one-time book. I promise you, folks, this is something that you're going to want to have very near you at all times, so that you can utilize it as a point forward perspective, because it will definitely help you in whatever capacity you find yourself in: career change, direction with, some of your life decisions, how you're going to handle, this next step, through the pandemic, whatever that might be. I think you can benefit greatly from it. So any last thoughts you want to share with everybody before we sign off today?
Let's see. Well, I want to thank everybody, first of all, and thank you, Steve, for having us be able to cover this with this episode. I want to thank everybody for joining in, and thank everybody that has already been giving me a lot of feedback and have reached out to me over this last couple of days since the book launched. I really want to thank everybody. And I just want to say to anybody that's out there, you know what? It's really, I just hope that this will be a source of inspiration for you and motivation for you to live your, best life possible and be the best version of yourself. So
absolutely. Go buy this book. Go buy this book right now. I promise you, it's going to change your life. It's going to make a difference. And available on Amazon.com, the ChrysalisAwakeningBook.com. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Conversations with Asha and Steve. We'll be back next week. We've got an episode that, we are excited about. So we will be back same time, as they used to say for my generation, same bat time, same bat channel. So we'll be back here to enjoy another conversations with Dr. Asha and myself. So thanks to everyone who joined us today. Go out and get Dr. Asha's book. You're gonna thank us later. I promise you. Asha, have an awesome day. Take care.
Okay, you too, Steve. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Conversations with Asha and Steve. We love to hear feedback and questions from our listeners. Please feel free to visit our Facebook page for more tips and information. You can also email us directly at info@ripplecentral.com for more information.